Recently, we documented the story of a little kit car, a Mini Marcos, which competed and was the only British car to finish the 24-hour race at Le Mans in 1966. It is a fabulous story and one which touched on how Jem Marsh developed this Mini-based sports car. Not only was it a story of how a kit car company got invited to race at Le Mans, it was an opportunity to take a look behind the curtain of racing politics.
Yes, the whole story is shrouded in mystery, and it made me want for more information on the genesis of the Mini Marcos. Who came up with the idea of taking the running gear of an Austin minivan and reshaping it using a fiberglass shell? Who were the principals? And where and how did the project get started? I knew that the name Marcos was a contraction of Jem Marsh and renowned automotive designer Frank Costin. But I believe that Frank lost interest in the Marcos project long before this car came into being.
In doing my research, I found that original car dubbed the D.A.R.T was the brainchild of a test pilot and club racer named Desmond Addicott. The D.A.R.T was based on a damaged minivan whose roof had been crushed. He found the idea of streamlining the Mini attractive and decided to develop this idea into a racing sports car using his knowledge of aerodynamics. Dizzy felt that the minivan floor pan would make a better prototype than the Mini Saloon because it had a longer wheelbase which would add stability at speed. He was helped by Paul Emery, a racing car builder in West London. Addicott wanted to use lightweight materials, but the body was in the end made from steel. They fitted a 1071cc Cooper engine and tested the car in a wind tunnel where it was found to be stable and aerodynamically effective. When finished, Dizzy dubbed the car the Mini D.A.R.T, with the letters standing for Dizzy Addicott Racing Team.
The history of Desmond Addicott's original D.A.R.T may, in practical terms, have been considered pretty much a stillborn project because the D.A.R.T never really became a production success. However, over time and through development of the D.A.R.T under different car makers, the D.A.R.T concept was carried forward. If there was no D.A.R.T, then there would be no Mini Marcos, no Mini Gems and other D.A.R.T-derived kit cars. Dizzy Addicott's D.A.R.T was first shown in the 1964 racing car show, where it garnered a lot of attention. Following the big reveal, a contract for production was struck between Addicott and Jem Marsh. Jem Marsh was to produce 8 fiberglass bodies, using the services of Falcon Shells, a company that Jem Marsh had an interest in. After the 8 shells were produced, Dizzy and Jem Marsh disagreed on the quality of the body shells. Addicott was unhappy with their quality, and this led to an acrimonious split, with Addicott ultimately losing interest. Marsh decided to create his own car, took 4 of the shells away, and used them to create the Mini Marcos. He asked Brian Moulton, who ran the glass fiber side of Marcos cars, to create a fresh take on the D.A.R.T, and thus the Mini Marcos came into being. Many felt that the Mini Marcos was not remotely attractive, and from a technical point of view, its shape wasn't even symmetrical, but it was inexpensive to build, instantly recognizable, and it worked brilliantly.
By this time, Addicott had tired of the idea of sports car production and returned to his aviation career. He took away the remaining 4 body shells from Jem Marsh and sold them to Jeremy Delmar-Morgan, whereupon Delmar-Morgan started production of the very similar Mini Gem. It also was based on the Dizzy's D.A.R.T design. Jeremy marketed the car as the Mini Gem. Morgan's Gem Developments Ltd started to manufacture the Mini Gem in North London, before manufacture was moved to Fell Point in Buckinghamshire. A Mini Gem Mark II was put into production in 1969 with an altered body shape, changed windscreen and raised roofline. Fell Point became bankrupt in 1971 and the Mini Gem moved to high-performance mouldings at Wombwell in Yorkshire. Malcolm Fell then took on the Mini Gem and created a Mark III version which sold until 1976.
As for the Mini Marcos, in 1967 the body shape was revised. with a larger number plate panel, recessed fuel filler, and simpler semicircular wheel arches. This was known as the Mark II. The Mark II and Mark III cars are very similar. The Mark III was the most numerous version. A batch of 50 cars was built between February 1967 and January 1968. In addition to cars produced by Marcos in Bradford-on-Avon, a batch of 40 was made under license in Ireland, and a similar number by Brian Raubenheimer in South Africa. After the company ran into financial difficulties in 1971, it was bought by Rob Walker's Corsley Garages and traded as Marcos Limited. The Mark IV Mini Marcos was introduced by this company. The body was substantially updated with a new floor pan based on the Mini Traveler and a rear hatch as standard. It was longer and taller than its predecessors. In 1975, production of the Mini Marcos was taken over by D&H Fiberglass Techniques Limited in Oldham, Lancashire. The model continued in production until 1981 when Dermot brought out the Richard Oakes designed Midas. The company later expanded and moved to a new factory at Corby, where it traded as Midas Cars Limited. However, a serious fire at Corby led to the demise of Midas, and under the terms of the original agreement, the Mini Marcos molds and rights reverted to Jem Marsh, who by this time had regained the Marcos Company. In 1991, the Mini Marcos' Silver Jubilee year, and in response to considerable interest from Japan, the Mini Marcos was further updated and given a new lease of life. The Mark V had larger arches to accommodate 12-inch wheels, or 13-inch with low-profile tires, and a front air dam. Wind-up windows and the later push-button door locks were fitted, along with the rubber-mounted front subframe, and a rear spoiler was available. Production of the Mark V Mini Marcos continued until 1995. After Marcos Sales Limited in Westbury went into voluntary liquidation, the Mini Marcos molds were acquired by Rory McMath of Marcos Heritage Spares. They are able to supply spare panels for the Mini Marcos and even complete shells. Marcos Heritage relaunched the Mini Marcos in 2005 as the Mark VI and Mark VI GT. The standard car is basically the same as the Mark V, whilst the GT version has a detachable racing front end and one-piece Perspex door windows.
So what we have learned is that Dizzy Addicott has given us a gift that keeps on giving. If it were not for the D.A.R.T, there would be no Mini Marcos, and if it were not for a falling out between Desmond Addicott and Jen Marsh, there would be no Mini Jen. We've also learned that a variety of models were produced by Mini Marcos, Mini Jen under a variety of different ownerships. But is this where the D.A.R.T, Mini Marcos, Mini Jen story ends? No, because the spirit lives on. The journey continues, and there is so much more to explore on both sides of the D.A.R.T family tree. Stay tuned.